Thanks everybody for coming. I have a lot to cover and a short amount of time. So I'm going to get into it. I'm going to cover three basic things. I'm going to try and cover the business. I'm going to try and cover the future, which is more important than anything, and then a wee little bit on how to get into this crazy industry. I'm Jeff Okun. I'm a visual effects supervisor. I'm the chair of the VES and a member of many organizations. But what really interests me is how does the mind work and why does any of us care about doing this? And it all comes down to perception. Perception is the key to basically everything in your life. So let me prove it to you. Your brain, you probably think is yours and you control it, when in fact, you are a part of your brain. And as evidence of this, how many of you see the man in the beans? The reason is because your brain only lets you see what it expects to see as opposed to the reality. So in this, I ask you to count how many balls. Do you see 5? Do you see 6? Do you see 7? Are you sure you've counted them all? And how many of you noticed that this poor fellow has 6 fingers on each hand? The point to the whole thing is your brain controls you more than you control your brain. And your brain is not always working for your best interests. The brain gives you different perspectives. And this is a perspective, as you all know, it's a flat image. It's painted on the side of the truck. It's only good from one angle. That's a perception thing. That's a thing. This fellow and many of him love to do drawings on the sidewalk. He didn't actually find somebody that little, but it's a perspective. He does lots of these kinds of drawings on the sidewalk. There's a lovely website called 3D Chalkwork that you can see. And again, it's all tricks with perspective. See, there they are drawing it. And you see the man in the back and further back, far, 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 far in the back. Crazy guy doing crazy things, right? I just love this stuff. The reason I love this stuff is it twerks your brain. It makes you look at things just a little bit differently than you would normally. It's like, how does the guy figure out how to draw things in these kinds of perspectives? So here's how visual effects deals with perspective. It's the only way we can actually work, is that nothing is actually there. Everything is layered in, and it only works from a single angle. Or if we're in stereo, 3D, it only works if you have the glasses on. So eventually it'll change, or not. Okay, so your brain sees only what it expects to see, period. So the trick for you is to trick your brain into letting you see reality, or letting you see a different way to see things, or getting you out of your rut that you've been in for your entire life, okay? So if this thing was working, that would be spinning, and I'd have another fabulous illusion for you, which since it's not spinning, I can't show you, but if you saw this still picture, after staring at that circle, the fish would be swimming. And that shows you that you basically can't trust your brain, because what would have happened, I can guarantee you, would have happened to everybody in this room. But I have no idea why that works. I only know that the brain is not your best friend. A lot of this stuff comes from Dr. Terrell, who's an evolutionary computer scientist with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena in California. So what this shows us is that the brain gives you a blind spot. And I'm really hammering this in on you for a point, because you must acknowledge that even though you think you're seeing things that you think are real, many of them are not real. It's all a matter of perspective. If you can learn to step to one side or the other of the way you're seeing things, you're going to see a whole new reality. So how does that, being able to look around your blind spot, how does that make what you do any different or any better? But first, before we get into that, here's a few little more fun facts about the brain. Did you know that the brain does this? And what does that mean? Now, the fastest computer today does exactly what our brain does. And did you know that the laptop and your brain are equal in many different ways. They weigh about the same, they're about the same size, and they use the same amount of power, which is about 10 watts. And the problem is everybody knows Moore's law, is that the laptop's computational power consistently doubles every 18 months, which is a bit of an exaggeration. And unfortunately, the human brain does not. However, we have managed to come out of the muck from when we were fishes all the way to whatever we are today. And the computer is just the computer. So how do you think we did that? Well, there's a big difference, is that computers can't do anything other than what we tell them to do. Even when we tell them to learn, they can only learn the way we teach them to learn currently. All right? The brain has always worked off of trial and error, and that's something that we call evolution. So the brain is always growing, not in size necessarily, but in ability, not in computations per second, but in interpretation of a perspective, being able to get rid of that blind spot, being able to see around things to, in essence, create a brand new reality. So the next slide. If you had the next slide, what you would see is the next part of the presentation. You'd see that computers are now learning to do things on their own, and they're getting faster and faster, and we call it artificial intelligence, and we're learning to write more effective programming that allows the creation of the artificial intelligence. There's a math that's out there that's called topology. It was first invented, or I shouldn't say invented, it was first ruined by Alexander the Great, who's the one who chose to go with Euclidean math as opposed to topography. Topography is a relational math kind of thing and allows all kinds of relations to be drawn or connections to be made in ways that they wouldn't usually do it. And as we begin to use this kind of math, which is coming back to us, the math or the computer then shows you things that you didn't see happening before, and it presents you with more questions. So that's a very exciting kind of future. The next part of this thing is that clip of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. What he did in that clip is he said that we choose to go to the moon before the end of this decade, which was a crazy thing for him to say. But it's a very valuable thing, and it really helped the country, America, a lot. And what that's now called, it's called a BHAG. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but a BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal. And what that's meant to be is to pick a goal that is beyond what you think is doable, and the road to trying to solve that goal then helps you invent things, helps you find new ways to do things. You combine this big, hairy, audacious goal, and you come up with what was called the UNIVAC. It was invented in 1948. It was the size of a room. It did 2,000 computations a second. And at this point, I always like to hold up my iPhone, because the iPhone does more than 1 billion times more computations a second than that computer that took up a room. That computer that took up a room cost $500 million of US. Oddly enough, this is the PlayStation 3 that was released in 2006, and it was the fastest computer in the world in 1990. It was as fast as the fastest computer in the world was in 1993. So think about this for a second, that the PlayStation 3 only costs $500 in America. The fastest computer in the world, as I said, costs $500 million. And it took only 17 years for the fastest computer in the world to effectively become a toy. And as many of you know, just a few days ago, PlayStation 4 was released, which is even faster than this thing. So now we're into another weird part of the presentation when we start to look at rates of adoption. So this will show you 1/4 of the US population, how long it took them to adapt to these various things. Telephone, 39 years, TV, 28 years, Facebook, 1.5 years, Twitter, 16 days. So all of these disparate pieces, right? The perspective, the blind spot, the BHAG, and the rate of acceptance of things. What does this mean? It means that if you're doing business as usual, then you're not going to be doing business much longer. It means if you're doing business as usual, you need to change. And the business community has come up with something on this that they call pivoting. And pivoting is a wonderful thing, and it really takes a lot of pressure off. What is pivoting? Pivoting is when you set a goal, or you set an idea, and you allow the market forces to blow you completely off course. And there's many examples of pivoting currently, and some of the most popular ones are GoPro, Starbucks, Nokia, Flickr, Hewlett-Packard, Nintendo, Wrigley Gum, which is one of my favorites. So GoPro, the guy wanted to make a waterproof camera that used film that he strapped to his wrist so he could take pictures of himself while he was surfing. And what happened is he made so much money selling these things by himself that he was able to afford to get a class in how to race Formula One racing cars. And when he was at the Formula One racing car place with a bunch of other people, for $100 they offered to put a camera on the car, and then he could get a video of himself racing. And he said, wait a minute, I have something that actually does it digitally, and so on and so forth. And he came and he put it on the car and he shot himself going around the track. And at the end of his lap, all the people that were also paying came up to him and said, where did you get that? He said, I invented it. And the next thing you know, the guy's worth $4 billion. But this is not what he set out to do. Starbucks set out to sell espresso makers and beans, but due to a trip to Italy, the head of Starbucks, the owner, had a great cup of coffee and said, why aren't we selling coffee? Nokia was a paper mill from Finland. Flickr was a role-playing game, and they just were not getting any traction in the market. And what happened is they ended up jettisoning everything except for their picture sharing function. And suddenly they're the #1 company on the internet. Hewlett-Packard was manufacturing testing products effectively and got blown off course. Nintendo was playing cards, vacuum cleaners, rice, taxis, whatever. And Wrigley, which is my favorite story, is a door-to-door salesman selling soap and baking powder. And everybody that he would visit, he'd give a piece of gum to. And found out that people were buying things just to get the gum. And so he stopped selling everything except for the gum, and it became a huge success in America. There's a pile of other companies that if the slide was there, you'd see off of Forbes, top 14 companies. They're listed there, but you can see that it's a wide-ranging group of things. So pivoting is a very important aspect, but not everything. I'm rushing through this thing as fast as I can for you. You need passion. As everybody you've ever asked anybody's advice on will tell you, is what you need to succeed is passion. But nobody defines what passion is, and I'm not going to either. I could, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to define passion, but I'm going to give you my 3 favorite quotes about passion. One person with passion is better than 40 people merely interested. I think we all can agree on that. This is a great quote from Michelangelo. If people knew how hard I worked to get my expertise, I wouldn't seem so wonderful after all driven by passion. And this one, which is so true, nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. You know, and that kind of pivots this presentation to the next little thing, which is what's the nature of success? How do you become successful? Is having passion enough? Is having the vision enough? Is having the knowledge enough? The answer is no. It's where talent, preparation, and opportunity intersect. In other words, it's luck. The GoPro guy, you know, nobody could have predicted that. The Flickr, nobody could have predicted that. Nintendo, nobody could predict that. But what it is people with passion who have actually prepared for where they're going without knowing they were going there. My little road to preparation is I wanted to be a comedian, then I wanted to be a magician, then I wanted to be a musician, and failed at all of those things, or found that you couldn't survive doing those things. And through a series of amazing accidents, I'm now in an industry where I got to do visual effects, where I use magic, music, and photography, which is another one of my passions. So So I wonder if that's really the right slide. I'm going to say it is and hope it comes back. There it is. So the changes that are going on and the pivoting that needs to go on, how do you apply that? What's going on currently in the entertainment marketplace? And by entertainment, I want to define that to mean any image that's put out there, whether it's a still photograph, a commercial, a broadcast show, something on the internet, a feature film, whatever it is. So right now, this is how the current generation, AKA my children, are experiencing entertainment. It's all screen to screen. They're doing it while they're playing games online and instant messaging and voice chatting and vaguely watching a TV show or a movie on the flat screen in the corner of the room. They're doing it all at the same time, and generally they're doing it alone. One of the things that my youngest son, Oliver, is so excited about that I'm in Korea is that he's an online gamer, and he knows a lot of people in Korea only through his online gaming. So they're in a room together virtually. And that is an amazingly powerful thing because that breaks apart borders. That means that all these people who speak to each other, and I don't know how they do the translating and so on and so forth, are actually one-to-one, peer-to-peer, interacting with each other. So my kid isn't doing what I used to do with my pals, which is go hang out in Westwood Village or something like that. So now let me run through an abbreviated history of the entertainment business to put this into perspective. Once upon a time, we all started as storytellers sitting around a fireplace. Then that evolved into stage plays, and that evolved into films of all things. And films devolved into radio, but I would call that an evolution, and radio evolved into television. Radio people thought television was going to kill them. Films thought television was going to kill them. Stage plays thought films were going to kill them. And storytelling thought everything was going to kill them. And then along came the internet, which is the great equalizer. So the whole key to this thing has to do with how is your product going to be seen? How is it going to be perceived? Remember the pivoting. Remember, if you're doing business the way that you used to do it, you're probably not going to be doing it much longer. Good news is Hollywood is doing the business the way that they did it 110 years ago. It has not evolved and it has not changed. And if you look at what's going on in the marketplace, you'll see that Hollywood is losing domestically, meaning inside America. They are losing box office. They're losing viewers. They are not capturing the new market. They are failing to pivot. They are failing to move on. But they're doing great internationally. And that means it's a tremendous opportunity for you because you are international. You're more international than we are. And I say this as an American coming from America, as we like to say, is that Americans think that everything American's really good. But the fact is the new generation thinks that everything that's not American is pretty good. Japanese animation, which you're going to hear from soon after I finish, is amazing. The Korean movies, stories that Americans have stole and remade in America are amazing. The originals, the current audience is being driven back to the source of all this stuff. And you think about the stories that have been told in America, AKA being translated into films and television shows, it's sort of the same story over and over and over and over again. And you see the stories that are coming out of Korea, out of Hong Kong, out of Japan, Finland, a little bit out of New Zealand, Australia. They are stories that the general population of the world is not familiar with, no matter how familiar you are with your local entertainment. So once upon a time, 110 years ago, we stuck film in a camera, we shot something, we projected it, and then we collected money from people. So that's how it's always been done. And this is a little chart that somehow got reformatted, but it shows a very complex system, and it involved hundreds and hundreds of people in order to do that little thing. And as time has gone on, it involves more and more and more people. But with the advent of our new digital revolution, it's changing to film or capture, editing going on at the same time that we're shooting it, sound, visual effects, and the digital intermediate, and then it's all uploaded to the cloud where it's played at a theater at 9 o'clock. And if the movie at 9 o'clock doesn't do well, we react to that, everybody redoes it, and they re-upload it, and it goes back out, and the midnight showing is a little bit different version of the movie. So this is the new model of how things are evolving into being done, which is more of a Mandela, where everything is being done at the same time. And the key to monetizing this process successfully is by using every step as a meaningful step. So if you're doing storyboards that go to previs, the previs actually ends up being useful enough to go over to the visual effects side, where a lot of the work is already done for you by the previs side. So you're saving a lot of money. Meanwhile, you're doing, everything is evolving. Most common thing I'm told today when I get on a film is the movie opens, like recently I was told the movie is going to open in September of 2014. We have a name, we know when it's going to open, we don't have a script, we don't have a director, and we don't know who's going to be in it. But it's opening on this date because it's about marketing. Marketing is also driving all this stuff. So this chart would have shown you all the different things that are feeding off of each other, and it would show you that what's the future going to be like? Movies are feeding off of TV, TV are feeding off of games, games are feeding off the internet are feeding off of what they can put out on phones, and phones goes back to the movie. The arrow should be going in both directions. And the new digital way of dealing with this allows you to do all this very fast, but it allows new opportunities. One of the new opportunities is to being able to modify every single bit of entertainment by the geographic region it's going to go in. For example, since I come from the film world, let's say that I'm making a Godzilla movie, which is one of my favorite movies, the original, not the redo. And I want to see Godzilla destroy Seoul. There's no reason I can't put Godzilla and some debris in there and a big green screen shot and have the projectionist point a digital camera out the window and get a modern shot of Seoul as it's going on. And everywhere this movie plays in every city, that could be done. These are some of the things that you need to recognize when I say I'm talking about getting rid of the blind spot. So the new technology allows you to do all of this stuff. It allows you, the most important of it is allows you to actually work from your laptop. You can capture on your laptop. The quality goes up with every generation, which doubles every 18 months, as Moore's Law has pointed us. It allows you to distribute from your laptop, edit from your laptop, create the music from your laptop or your desktop or anything. So what that means is that anybody is now a content producer, which means we've kind of leveled the playing field, because it's no longer about who has the fastest computer, who has the most money to be able to buy the best software, because it's all been commoditized. And that means that virtually everybody can do this. Every aspect of the system of old Hollywood can now be done by any individual anywhere in the world, as long as they have access to the internet for their final step to upload their product. The trick is how to monetize such a thing. And we're all working on that. And if you have an idea about that, you have a different perspective, a different way to look around your blind spot, or if there's a pivot that nobody else is making that you might be able to make to find a way to monetize this, this is the holy grail. So this new digital stuff allows you to do better looking stuff on shorter schedules for less money from anywhere in the world. But it also allows some negative things. It also allows Hollywood guys to defer their decision making to the very last second. So many companies are hired these days not based on their talent base, but based on how much processing power they can yield together in order to redo an entire movie in 2 weeks. It's not uncommon at all. On the day the Earth stood still, we added 5 new scenes that hadn't been done in the movie in less than 6 weeks before opening of the film, and we did them very well. And this, like I say, this happens all the time. So back to the point. So recognize things are changing really fast, and in times of chaos, opportunity abounds. This is the wild, wild west. And I don't know that there isn't a person in this room that may not have the idea that's going to change everything. Hollywood is currently stumped, which is somewhat of a shock and a surprise, given that they were stumped when the music industry went digital, and they were way behind the curve on getting together with that. For some reason, even though all the studios, the conglomerates that own the studios own the music industry, They now seem to be baffled by the fact that it's all gone digital in movies, and the distribution pipelines, piracy, all the same problems that music faced, we're facing now in the movie business. So I could tell you a great story right now. You know, I think I'll tell you. I met this crazy guy. He's a genius. He was so smart that the company he worked for hired 8 people that followed him. They had cameras on him, they had tape recorders on him, and they had photographers on him, because anytime he said anything, it may be something nobody's ever thought of before. And he was that crazy kind of guy. He worked for the CIA for 20 years, and he lived in Amsterdam. And they found this fellow because he was one of the few guys around that could figure out that math I was talking about, the topological math. And the topological math actually got exposed to the CIA through an incident that happened in the Cold War, where a Russian fighter defected, and we took it apart and said, how did they get this technology? It's so much more advanced than anything we have, which caused the CIA to start watching the Russians' technological advances specifically. And through a series of advances, they identified one individual who happened to be from India, and they made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and he defected to America and taught us about topographical math. This guy that I'm talking about, his first name is Ken. They had a movie that was based on him. The CIA showed up at his doorstep and gave him a photograph that was virtually pitch black and said, there are 18 ships in this photo. Here's a book, and it has the profile of every ship in the world in it, the silhouette of every ship in the world in it. Call us when you think you've identified the 18 ships. Ken, being a topological mathematician, figured out a way to deal with this imagery, feed it all into the computer, and virtually within 6 weeks, called up the CIA and said, here's the deal, 12 of these objects, 12 of the 14 objects in this picture are this ship, this ship, this ship. He got 100% on that. He goes, the 13th object is either this ship or that ship, and he was right on that. And he goes, and the 14th object is a truck. So the CIA made Ken an offer, and Ken worked with them for 20 years, and at the end of 20 years, he retired, and there's a rule in the CIA that after 20 years, anything that you brought to the CIA, if it doesn't threaten security of the country, you get to have it. So he started this crazy company that was called Omnigon that on the internet, they hooked up with spaceships and all manners of things. But what he did is he took this math and he did amazing things with it. And part of the process with the math was he had to get it patented. So he hired patent attorneys, and they said he has to do it hardwired, and then you have to have scientists in to verify. So he had the scientists that broke down the human genome, that cataloged the human genome, who was very proud of himself, and he came in for the test, and he discovered using this math that he had only done half of the human genome, and the half that he did do, half of it was wrong. So he immediately joined this company, and this company's math then started to do wonderful, wonderful things, but the company melted down ultimately. And some of the crazy things they did, by the way, was power distribution, cell phone distribution, trying to do trading on the stock market, because this math, what it was is that it effectively kind of learned a little bit. It would ask you questions, and then it would apply things, and it would show you things. And what Ken said to me when he was trying to explain this to me, he goes, how does the human brain work? It's an amazing thing. If you never saw a chair in your life, and I show you a photograph of a chair, and then took you into a warehouse with hundreds of objects, some of them chairs, some of them not, you would be able to go chair, 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 not chair, not chair, not chair. How do you do that? Especially considering the photograph is two-dimensional. It's in one kind of lighting, and the chair in the photograph is wood, but yet you were able to identify a metal chair. You were able to identify a chair with 3 legs instead of 4 legs. That's what the human brain does. That's the blind spot that we're not aware of right now. But this math would then show things to you and say, is this a chair, is this a chair? And after you see so many of those things, then the math starts to go, well, we think this is a chair and this is a chair, and it starts showing you things that you didn't see. So stock market trading, power distribution on power grids, all manner of medical, pharmaceutical testing, and so on and so forth. And this company was set to go huge, but unfortunately, Ken is crazy. So Ken and the guy that ran the company, that funded the company, got into an argument and ended up suing each other, and the technology got frozen. The math isn't frozen, but the technology is frozen. So it's a very sad thing. But it was very exciting because that's when the first time somebody took my brain and they actually turned it sideways. And I was able to take that into the visual effects world and solve visual effects problems in ways I never would have dreamt of, not by using the math, but by using what the math showed me about blind spots and about perspective. So that's why I say, in times of chaos, opportunity abounds. Look around your blind spot. Try to find different ways to do it. If you keep running into a block, sometimes it's best to put it down and play with it. Just have some fun for a while. Stop being so serious about everything. So the key is to create, to explore, to push, pull, to change, to pivot, whatever it is that's blocking you, whatever it is that you're trying to push forward. And that's really the only way you can embrace your future. So if you consider the world as one place now, I hate to steal something from the Apple ad campaign, but think differently is really the key to the whole thing. So there's no reason at all in this current situation that Korea cannot embrace the BHAG, that it can't involve in things with passion, that it can't pivot, turn, and change, that it can't have fun with what's out there, and then start stepping into the global market with passion, excitement, and power, and be able to present the things that you already have that are amazing in ways that we've never seen before. And that comes to a section of the presentation that I had to cut out, but it all has to do with the marketing. And there are ways to market yourself that are amazing. So most of us aren't good at marketing, but marketing is the key. So you need to pull together a marketer, a creative, and then the ability to see around the blind spot. And that's the challenge that I lay at your feet, because from everything that I've seen and from my experience in working with various Korean companies, particularly in animation and whatnot, there's no reason that Korea could actually not lead the world of entertainment, especially at this time when chaos and confusion is abounding. So I have to thank you and say, why not you?
네, 감사합니다. 질문 있으신 분들 질문 받도록 하겠습니다. 혹시 질문 있으면 손을 들어주시면 Q&A 시간 갖도록 하겠습니다. 네, 저 뒤에 계신데요. 마이크 좀 넘겨주시겠습니까?
혼돈의 시대라고 하는데 그 이노베이션이 원래 디지털화되면서 아날로그적인 광고와 홍보 마케팅을 지금 개혁하고 있지만 더 이노베이션을 더 추구하려면 어떤 방법이 필요한지 여쭤보고 싶습니다.
질문 다시 한 번만 해주시겠어요?
그러니까 지금 디지털 컨텐츠잖아요.
You know, one of the speakers that's going to be here in a little while is going to talk about game engine technology. That's something that I find very fascinating. The reason I find it fascinating is I believe it is the future to live entertainment. And I'm not talking about films or television necessarily, I'm talking about stage and everything. So the key to the future, in a sense, is casting about in things that you find interest in, that you can go and experiment with, that you can have fun with, and through the act of having fun, you can find things. But as has always been since, I believe, the dawn of time, there's a creative aspect. There's an artist's mind involved. You know, there is so many tools that we already have that have been used a million times, and you can actually take them and combine them in a different form, so to show something that nobody's ever seen before. As an example of that, look at Legos. You know, those little plastic blocks that you put together. You can buy the box and build a little device, and then after you finish building whatever it is, you take it apart and then you get bored with it and you start putting it together and building all manner of crazy things. And some product advances have actually come out of playing with Legos. And if you look at some of the new cultures that are abound today, like the Google culture and the Netflix culture and even Microsoft, you know, a lot of what they come up with comes from just play, where they encourage playtime. One of the key things in my upbringing in this industry is I worked for a graphic designer by the name of Saul Bass. And the way that Saul would come up with his graphic designs is just fooling around. He would just draw silly things and we'd talk about it and push and pull and play with it and come up with all manner of things. And that theme constantly is being reborn. You can see him in movies like Big, where Tom Hanks plays an adult who's actually 6 years old and he's inventing stuff just by playing with them. If truth be told, many things that you would think come from, you know, just crazy smart people, come from people who are just fooling around. From my own experience, you know, I'm very big on space, and I like to talk to all the people at JPL and NASA, and the landing, how to land on Mars, came out of playing around with volleyballs. The new system for landing on Mars, which is crazy complex and I would have bet against, came about with playing with model rocketry and these little toys we have, little figures of men with little tiny parachutes on them, and you throw them into the air and float around. So, you know, it's not that there is any individual thing. This is the thing, okay? It's this gray soft matter that I equated to a laptop. The thing that we can do that the technology can't do is look at things anew, which goes back to that blind spot that I keep talking about. And to show you how silly these blind spots are, I don't know if any of you have ever done this, but one of the things I used to do was lay on the ground and stare at the ceiling as a kid. And I used to imagine walking around on the ceiling and how you would get, like, how would I get through this doorway here? And it was really fun. And we've come up with, I've seen other people come up, I wish I came up with some pretty cool things, including recently a movie that just came out all about that. And I've seen some, I saw a student film that came out of Stuttgart about only one person in the room lost their gravity, and the whole film came about how to deal with that. So again, it's up to you. The tools are out there, and tools to be invented are being done every day. I hope that answers your question.
네, 시간 관계상 한 분만 더 질문 받도록 하겠습니다. 손을 들어주시면 감사하겠습니다. 질문 이제 더 없으신 건가요? 네, 그러면은 Q&A는 여기서 마치도록 하겠습니다. 네, 고맙습니다. 우리 멀리서 오셔서 귀한 말씀 주셨습니다. 네, 큰 박수로 감사의 박수 한번 부탁드리겠습니다.